What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to TWE, where we sit here and talk all wrestling entertainment. Last night we had Friday Night SmackDown, not just the normal SmackDown, but we had the Go Home edition of SmackDown for the Royal Rumble of 2025. We open up SmackDown tonight with Michael Cole and Pat McAfee sitting there, and if you're wondering why they're there on SmackDown when they're supposed to be on Raw, well, the answer is plain and simple. I don't know. Pat McAfee does, however, get a huge pop because he did, of course, play for the Indianapolis Colts as a kicker. After talking about the Rumble for a little bit, they send it to Joe Tessitore, who's waiting in the ring with the WWE titles, both versions, the Wing Angle and the current version of it, hanging over the ring. And he's having Kevin Owens come out to get finally his interview after he whined and complained last week of not getting said interview. KO comes out for the interview with huge boos because everybody's mad at him for, rightfully so, what he's done. And I'm a little upset myself. And it's not for what everybody else is. I'm just upset because he wore a boring, generic merchandise t-shirt instead of some sort of goofy interview me t-shirt or something like he's been for weeks with the whole Easter egg shirts he's been wearing. Kind of wish he wore one, but he didn't. So you know what? One out of a few weeks. As long as he shows up at the Rumble tonight in some sort of Easter egg t-shirt, I'll let it slide. KO was then asked, what are we getting wrong about the story when clearly he's the bad guy, but for some reason he thinks that we got the story wrong. And all Kevin Owens could say was, he says the reason why we can't see the actual story being played here is because we're a bunch of Cody fanboys. And that he's also getting sick that everybody keeps saying when they win the Rumble, they might challenge Gunther or they might challenge Cody, but no one ever says anything about Kevin Owens. And he doesn't care if it's Seth Rollins, Sami Zayn, CM Punk, or whatever it may be. And that he's going to be the one holding the title at WrestleMania. With that being said, he decides he's going to grab the Wing Angle belt, puts it over his shoulder, said, this is the only reason why I came out in the first place, and he decides to leave. Takes the Wing Angle belt, says he will take the new one tomorrow, well, tonight, at the Rumble, and then he decides to leave. That's when CM Punk's music hits out of nowhere, and I'm pretty sure you were just like how I was, and just thinking, ooh, this is going to be good. Punk says he owes apologies to Kevin Owens. One, for interrupting him. He knows how much he hates that when Seth Rollins did it to him, so he apologizes for that. And for two, for overlooking KO like he doesn't have a chance. But when he wins, he's going to be coming after KO specifically. KO just comes back saying that he likes other people in the Rumble, that he hopes he wins, specifically 29 other people, which, you know, is all but Punk. He talks about Punk's dreams of main eventing WrestleMania that he's always wanted to do, is well documented, and he says he can't wait for Punk to be in an old folks home knowing that he never succeeded that dream. Kind of harsh. That's, I think, a long time ago. Punk then comes back with his own tirade, or comeback, and says, brings up some... Punk then comes back and brings up some own accolades. He says, stops me when you know him. He's like, I've never lost at 5 times at the Rumble during big title matches. Kevin Owens has. And 2, things need to happen. First, he needs to win the Rumble, and then second, KO needs to win the title. But he's always ready for a fight, and he's just in case that don't happen. He said he's ready to go right there. Kevin Owens gives him a stare down, and then just straight up says, no thanks, and leaves. Kind of shows... KO better hope that if he wins that Punk don't, because I don't think he's going to hold it if he does. We then cut to the back where The Miz is sitting there talking to General Manager Nick Aldis, saying that Andrade should have taken his offer and joined him last week, but since he didn't, he has nothing for him, and if he would see him right then and there, he'd punch him straight in the face, which, come to find out, Andrade's standing right behind him. Miz turns around, Andrade says, as he challenges him to a match so he can prove himself to him. It says, my career already proves everything you need to know. I don't need to prove anything else. But Nick Aldis says, you know what? That's a good idea. Let's have it one-on-one. We're getting Andrade versus The Miz later tonight. This then leads us to Melo Hayes versus Jimmy Uso. And I got to say, a pretty solid match. Jimmy tries to jump Melo at the beginning of the match to get the advantage, but Melo actually reads it and gets the advantage for himself. However, during his barrage of attacks, Melo forgot that the one rule in wrestling is if you're going against a Samoan, you never do a headbutt against a Samoan. Knocked himself silly. Maybe knocked some sense into himself. Jimmy sees Melo roll to the outside and goes for a big dive to the outside, but as he hits the ropes and comes back, he gets clotheslined by Melo, who snuck back inside. Jimmy then gets up and almost gets a Samoan drop, but it gets countered instead by Melo Hayes, who hits a huge DDT. Hayes, instead of taking advantage, though, however, gets distracted by one of the basketball players they had there. I don't know basketball that well to really remember the name. It does come back later. But Jimmy hits a huge dive onto Carmelo Hayes on the outside. We go to the top rope where Jimmy grabs an arm and he does like an arm drag into a neck breaker from the top rope and gets a 1-2 piece for his troubles. Some back and forth happens until Jimmy Uso gets a big super kick. Jimmy then goes for the splash and gets it, but he gets caught, rolled up, but only gets the count of 2 for Carmelo Hayes. Melo then decides to hit his own splash from the top rope, hits it, and only gets a 2-piece for himself. To his own dismay, like he thought he had it, but you ain't gonna beat a Samoan with their own move. Come on now. What I think happened next was a little bit of confusion, a little mix up in communication or something, because it looked very flunky, but I see what they were going for. Because Melo goes up to the top rope, Jimmy meets him upside, goes for a Super Samoan drop. Melo rolls out of it, rolls up Jimmy, holds the ropes, only gets a 2 count. Jimmy very sloppily rolls him up, and it looks like he's holding on to the tights. Like, you're going to cheat, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to show you how to do it if you're going to cheat. And then gets the 1, 2, 3. Very, very awkward ending match, but a good match nonetheless. This leads us to the Rumble by the numbers bit that they do every single year when the Rumble's coming up, where they tell us how many people have won it 3 times and 2 times and what numbers are most popular and everything else. There was, however, a couple of new ad ones. Like one that stuck in my head is it's been over 2,000 days since John Cena's been in the Rumble, and he'll be in his first Rumble since then to today at this year's Rumble. So I thought that was kind of an interesting factoid. When we change lanes back up now, we're at the Women's U.S. Championship where we got Chelsea Green defending against Mi Chin for like the 5th or 6th time in the past couple months since the U.S. title showed up. That's been the only rivalry that's been going on. And I got to tell you, I'm over it, but I don't think they are. Chin starts the match with a couple of roll-ups and it only gets 2 pieces for said troubles because it's, the start of the match. Chelsea gets the advantage for a second, but then decides she wants to just slap the taste out of Mi-Chin's mouth, which really is a bad idea because Mi-Chin just turned into Brock Lesnar and took her to German Suplex City, which led to an outside dive. Mi-Chin gets back into the ring with Chelsea Green, goes for the eat the feet, but gets thrown outside instead for her troubles. Green then, of course, gets the advantage because of this. After some back and forth and everything, Green does take Mi-Chin's face and smash it into the middle turnbuckle. She then pins her for a 2-piece. Mi-Chin then starts making a comeback here with a suplex, then followed by a cannonball into the corner. Goes for a pin and gets a 1-2 as well. Green then goes for the Unpretty Her, which gets counted into an Eat the Feet. Mi-Chin actually hits the Eat the Feet, but Green gets pulled out by Piper Niven, which brings B-Fab in to give Piper a big old boot. Throws Chelsea Green back into the ring. Green, however, just decides she's going to roll out on the other side, goes back to the timekeeper area, and as Mi-Chin goes to grab her, she pulls out the kendo stick and just starts wailing on her, causing a disqualification, which means that Chelsea Green did get to keep her title, but she did not get the last laugh because Mi-Chin got the kendo stick back and just took out all her anger onto it. So I'm pretty sure we're going to get another Mi-Chin versus Chelsea Green for a U.S. title. Probably in I would assume 2 weeks or so. We then meet with Saxton interviewing Naomi and Bianca Belair, the women's tag team champions, and asking them the same question they ask every faction, every team, every group of friends, every group there ever is and ever was, which is, if you're the last ones in the Rumble, how are you going to coexist? They answered with the same generic face answer that most faces will say. Well, if that means if you lose, then I win. If I lose, then you win. So we both win. We either win either way. No, only one of you get to win. You don't both get to be co-Rumble winners. That's not a thing. We don't do co-Rumble winners. We don't do co-champions. We don't mention that. We get another Charlotte Flair vignette, which is getting very Ric Flair-esque, just with her little flair to it. I hate myself for that. Damian Priest comes out then next, and he decides he wants to give us all the accolades that he's been doing over there on Raw. He was a betrayer, then the betrayed, and then a friend, and then the backstabber, then he was world champion, Money in the Bank winner, all that stuff. But who cares? Because that happened on Raw, and SmackDown is new territory, and here we are going to bring it down. He says it's all about championships, and that the Rumble tonight is going to be where it starts. But at this point in time, that's when FATU's music hits. And FATU comes out and says, you know what, me and you are actually a lot alike. We both came from the ghetto. We came from the gutter. We had to drag ourselves out. But however, you had somebody help you, bring you up, while I did it all by myself. Which is kind of odd to say, because he was brought in by a hand. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to bring my mic up because FATU versus Damian Priest for, and not even for a title, just for a one-on-one. Yes, please. Priest says, however, though, if we're both from the streets, then why are we talking? And he just gives a big old super kick into Tonga Loa. He gives a stare down with Jacob Fatu and Damian Priest. And then Tonga Loa gets back up, attacks Priest from behind, and they start doing a 2-on-1 action. But what happened? But out of the heavens, an angel appeared in the form of Night, and he came out and he helped Damian Priest. He came out. Tonga Loa came and went to go swing with him in the chair. Nah. See what Priest did? He put his boot up and kicked that chair straight in the Tonga Loa's face. And then he grabbed the chair, but Jacob Fatu punched it out of his hands. Damian Priest then super kicked Fatu. LA Knight grabbed the chair, bashed him over the head with it, and then once they rolled out of the ring, LA Knight said, listen, you want to talk about numbers and everything? I have two numbers. 2 + 2 = 4. That means we get a tag team match. Let's make it happen, which, of course, is going to happen later tonight in our main event. Yeah! We go back into the back where we see Motor City Machine Guns talking with Los Garza, saying they got Los Garza's back with against DAY and Pretty Deadly. Los Garza said, that's fine, but come to the Rumble, we going for you. And, I mean, I don't think it really matters who you go for because you ain't winning. This leads us into Motor City Machine Guns tagging up with Los Garzas versus Pretty Deadly and DIY. And, kind of slower than I expected. The Pretty Deadly starts with the Garza guys and get the advantage, and then Ciampa tags in and gets put down instantly. At this point, it starts to get smoky in the arena, so I guess Rob Van Dam was in the back also, probably bored of this match. Like, I just wasn't excited for this match. Like, out of all the talent in there, it sounded good, but it just went way too slow paced for me. I just couldn't really get into it. I tried, and I just couldn't. But Motor City comes in, gets a tag. They hit their double team drop kick thing onto Ciampa. Leads to a 2-person dive onto 4 others. Pretty Deadly did do one thing pretty interesting in this match, though. When Ciampa was getting Irish ripped to the corner, Pretty Deadly put their backs like on the top buckle, so it was like their side was sticking out further than the buckles were to help block it. That was pretty interesting, and I like that. But let's cut fast forward because like I said, it's kind of I didn't care. I'm sorry, I don't know how many people actually did, and I wish it was a more fun match, but it just wasn't. I really hope that the tag match tonight at the Rumble is better than this match. 2 out of 3 falls. It should be. Also, so story driven. At one point, one of the Motor City Machine Guns, I think it was Sabin, got a blind tag on one of the Los Garza guys. They got upset about it, and they said, fine, you want it? You do it. And they just let up and left, which led to DIY and Pretty Deadly against Motor City Machine Guns. Ciampa tries to go for a big boot. He boots one of the Pretty Deadly guys, so they do the same thing. You know what? You're going to hit us, then you figure it out and you get it done. And during that whole distraction, Sabin rolls up Ciampa and gets the 1, 2, 3. Like, it just, does it sound interesting? Like, I wish I could make it sound better, but it was honestly a pretty boring match. We come back from commercial afterwards then, and we see Jacob Fatu and Tonga Loya walking down with Fatu running his mouth like he does, which, by the way, is so good. If you haven't seen his promo at Saturday Night's Main Event or the promo from last night, they're all so good. You know, let's break kayfabe here for a minute. You know everybody gets scripts or bullet points. I guarantee you, they don't give him anything. They just say, you do you, and he does, because it feels so real, like on top of the head. Tonga Loya, though, sees the WWE Tag Team Championships just sitting on a box, and while he's staring at him, DIY comes to grab him back up, which, DIY, you need to watch them titles. You need to be better at keeping an eye on them titles, my friends. People stolen titles from cars in airports. You don't think just leaving them on a box in a backstage area, not somebody might get tempted by that? It almost happened. You guys showed up at the right time. But you got to be more careful with your belts. Those pressure cargo right there. DIY then walks away, and who do they run into? Well, of course, Pretty Deadly. They say, what is going on out there? Pretty Deadly says, you hit one of us. Gargano says, we ain't got time to sit there and argue right now. We got tomorrow, the Rumble. It's going to be a big match. We're going to need you. Pretty Deadly says, hey, guess what? Tomorrow, you're on your own. Deuces. The NBA basketball player that distracted Carmelo Hayes earlier, Tyrese something or another, joins Pat McAfee and Cole because he plays for the Indiana Pacers. They decided to show us a replay of when Michael Cole and Cody Rhodes got crowd surfed at the Rumble Kickstart event that they had earlier that day. Kind of weird. We then turn our attentions to Liv Morgan versus Naomi. And there's an interesting fact. Naomi is 2-0 against Liv Morgan, which means Liv Morgan has never beaten, even though she's been a world champion, never beaten Naomi. I think that's kind of an interesting fact. Naomi gets the advantage early. Liv gets a couple moves in by Naomi, but Naomi keeps regaining control. Rodriguez interferes thanks to Liv Morgan distracting the ref, which gives Liv Morgan the advantage. When we come back from another ad break, Liv Morgan once again distracts the ref for Raquel Rodriguez to interfere into the match. Liv hits a cold breaker at one point for a 2 count. Keeps control. Even at one point hits the 3 amigos. Naomi comes back after hitting the jawbreaker on the Liv. Hits a bulldog into the middle turnbuckle. Turnbuckle getting a lot of action tonight. Turns that into a crossbody and gets a 2 count. Liv gets a comeback by pulling the hair. Sets up for a diving code breaker from the middle rope. And gets a pin for 1, 2, nothing more than just a 2 count. Naomi comes back when she out of nowhere hits the rear view and then sets up for her split leg moonsault. But Raquel Rodriguez distracts her again. Bianca finally comes around, takes care of Raquel Rodriguez. Naomi goes for the split moonsault again, but enough time has been wasted. Liv got out of the way. She hits nothing. Liv then gets up, hits a sunset flip into a pinning predicament, which Naomi rolls out of into her own surprise pin and gets the 1, 2, 3. Now, that is the 3rd roll-up finish tonight on this SmackDown as is. Let's really hope. I understand that it's the most devastating move of all sports entertainment, but we do not need another roll-up apocalypse. We don't. We don't need it. Use it sparingly. While Bianca and Naomi were celebrating, however, Raquel Rodriguez comes in, lays them out, eventually picks up. Liv Morgan comes into the fray, gets some wails in, and then Raquel just picks her up in a powerbomb position, power bombs her on top of both Bianca and Naomi, and I'm just like, hey, Raquel, this ain't a Rumble brawl. That's your tag team partner. We then go to a recap of Jacob Fatu versus Braun Strowman from Saturday Night's Main Event. And again, if you haven't seen it, go see it. It needs to be seen. It was such a good match, even though it ended in a no contest, basically. We finally get to that teased Andrade versus Miz match, and I gotta tell you, probably the match of the night, which shocks me because I don't think Miz has had a match of the night in years. Miz gets a nice arm drag at the start of the match, which leads to a nice back and forth between the two. Till Andrade hits a Hurricanrana, which leads into the Miz getting onto the second rope and hitting his own, or going to the top rope, and hitting his own Hurricanrana, which we haven't seen the Miz do, I don't think, ever. Miz goes on the outside for Andrade. Andrade, however, counters him with another Hurricanrana, which then leads him to doing a moonsault from the top rope to the outside onto the Miz. When we come back from an ad, we see the Miz takes over after he does a very scary-looking backdrop to the outside on Andrade. He throws him over, and his leg just catches that top rope, and it looked ugly. Miz goes out of the ring with him, starts slamming him against the barricade. Again, the barricade, the turnbuckles, all of them, they're getting a lot of action tonight. Miz then throws Andrade on the inside, hits him with a flying double axe handle, his normal moveset, starts doing the it kicks, misses the final head kick, though, and gets a huge chop for his troubles. You heard that thing echo like you're at the Grand Canyon. Andrade then hits his double knees into the corner. He goes for the pin and only gets the 2 count. Then he goes for a kick. Miz counters it and turns it into a spinning DDT for his own self, also for a 2 count. And at this point, I don't know who's going to get the big W. We go to the top rope where Andrade wanted a superplex, but because of some back and forth, action, Miz trying to stop that from happening, he ends up settling with a super Spanish fly from the top rope and gets a 1-2 for his own troubles. At this point, the audience in the arena is all loudly chanting, "This is awesome." And I'm telling you, I cannot agree. I cannot agree. That's not what I meant at all. I strongly agree. And I'm saying, for my money, the Miz versus Andrade was the match of the night. Andrade goes for a moonsault. Miz rolls out of the way. Andrade goes for the spinning elbow. It gets countered. Miz rolls him up. Andrade for a 1-2. Andrade kicks out of that into his own roll-up for a 1-2. And I'm not going to lie, I was worried they were going to end it with a 4th roll-up because they've already done 3. But Andrade gets up, hits him with that spinning elbow, gets the 1-2-3. Your winner, Andrade. This leads us to Santos Escobar talking to Damian Priest with an offer that Damian Priest ultimately turns down. Then R-Truth shows up, tells Priest, "Hey, welcome back to Raw, but you got to stick to a show." And then Priest tries to tell him it's SmackDown, and he goes, "No, it's Raw." And you know what? Adam Pearce, he's lost some weight, and he's got some hair, and it's like, damn. LA Knight then shows up and says he's ready to kick heads, in which R-Truth just hugs them both and tells LA Knight, "Welcome to Raw." LA tries to tell him, but it's SmackDown, but Priest goes, "Hey, listen, it's going to be easier if you just let him think it." This then leads us to Tiffany Stratton talking to Selena Vega, where Selena Vega says she's happy to be on SmackDown again, and she's eyeing that title, and at the Rumble, her journey for it might start, which Tiffany goes, "Good luck to you," but she really doesn't care. We then get a John Cena vignette, also explaining, his whole journey, and this is his last year, which I have to say, I have watched his career since 2002. I've seen it from beginning to end. This is kind of a weird thing to me. Tiffany Stratton then goes to the ring where Michael Cole and Pat McAfee are there to interview her, and Pat McAfee asks if there's anything, or Michael Cole asks if there's anything that's changed, which she says, "No, it's the simple fact the only thing that's changed is I've always known it was Tiffy time, and now everybody knows it's Tiffy time." And then Pat McAfee reminds her, "Well, I can tell you one thing that's changed. You have that belt. Now everybody's coming at you, and there are 29 other stars. Could be Bianca, could be Liv, could be Raquel, could be Nia Jax." Which she just completely just says it doesn't matter who it is, it's going to be Tiffy time regardless, which brings out Candice LeRae out of all people, who sits there and tells her that she was just jealous the whole time because Nia Jax took her over Tiffy to be the tag team partner. Tiffany Stratton says, how am I jealous? I'm the champion, which at that point, Nia Jax comes out, lays her out with a Samoan drop, and then hits a leg drop, and then hits the Annihilator onto Tiffany, leaving her there, making her statement known. They then go through the card of the Rumble of all the matches, the Cody Rhodes versus Kevin Owens, the DIY versus Motor City Machine Guns match, the two Rumbles, all that stuff. Which then moves us along to the promised main event, LA Knight and Damian Priest versus Jacob Fatu and Tonga Loa, and we got some story building, folks. LA and Damian waste no time. They jump right in. The ref doesn't even try to separate them. He just says, screw it, ring the bell, let them go. So they go on for a while. They end up getting Fatu out of the ring. Damian and LA Knight have the high ground, if you will. And then Tonga Loa is laying in the ring. LA Knight goes out of the ring. Damian and Tonga Loa start out the match as LA Knight tags himself in, and unfortunately that was a bad time because Tonga Loa's counter meter has been back up, and he gets away from LA Knight, gets tagged into Jacob Fatu. LA Knight, however, locks in, brother, and he just hits this huge neck breaker out of nowhere. Stomps Fatu into a whole new mud hole. Fatu tries to counter a suplex. LA Knight counters that into another neck breaker. Tries to pin Fatu and doesn't even get a 1 count. Priest tags in, and then he goes after Fatu. And once he gets on the middle rope, Tonga Loa distracts him. Fatu pulls him down, gets him into position for the Samoan hip attack, hits the Samoan hip attack, and then tags in Tonga Loa. Tonga Loa gets some offense in, and then tags Fatu back in. A lot of quick tags back and forth. Priest finally fights back and gets the tag in LA Knight, which he hits a DDT, followed by an elbow drop. Then Tonga distracts LA Knight for Fatu to get the advantage with a huge running tackle. Tonga Loa and then LA are eventually back into the ring with Tonga standing tall. Fatu takes over the beatdown, and LA tries to come back, but Fatu easily gets it back. Tonga tags back in to keep the pressure up on LA Knight. But then LA Knight starts coming back. Fatu stops the tag from LA Knight to Damian Priest by taking out Damian Priest. Fatu then goes for a hip attack on LA Knight, but LA moves out of the way, which gives LA Knight the hot tag meter that he needs to get the hot tag on Damian Priest, which he does. Fatu does get the tag also to Tonga Loa, but Damian Priest easily takes care of that with a big flapjack. Tonga rolls out. Damian Priest rolls out on the other end, goes over, hits a big tackle, throwing Tonga over the announce table. He then super kicks Fatu and then grabs him, slams his face into the announce table, and then throws him into the turnbuckle, the ring post, laying out Fatu for at least a little bit. Priest then throws Tonga Loa into the ring, grabs him up, does a old Undertaker style old school walk onto the ropes, leading into a crossbody, gets a 1-2. Priest then hits another big kick, goes for the Razor's Edge. It gets countered by Tonga Loa, who puts him into a headlock. He gets him finally out of it, but then Priest gets distracted by Fatu, which gets a roll up on him. And again, I thought they got it here, and I was like, why would you do this? Why would you do a fourth roll up pin? Luckily, they didn't do that, but it seemed like they would. As Damian Priest starts getting up from that roll up, Tonga Loa hits a big stalling DDT, also still gets a 2 count, only because LA Knight showed up and saved him by knocking him off of there. LA Knight then goes to the outside, rams into Jacob Fatu into the announcer area. Tonga Loa goes for his basement clothesline, gets caught by the neck by Damian Priest. Damian Priest then hits that big rebound clothesline he does, sets him up for the South of Heaven, hits it, gets the 1, 2, 3, your winners, Damian Priest and L.A. Knight. Yeah! But before any celebration could happen, Jacob FATU was the first to get up from the timekeeper area. He goes into the ring. He lays out Damian Priest. He hits him with the Samoan drop. Then he hits him with that big jumping moonsault to end the show. And I gotta tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that is how you end a wrestling show 100%. So what did you think of last night's SmackDown for the go home SmackDown for the Royal Rumble? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to see what you guys have to think. And make sure you like and subscribe to the channel to get and hit that notification bell so you get notified when the next ones come out. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Yay!